Hi, everybody. It's Chris and Lisa from Been There, Got Out, and we help people suffering in and struggling to get out of toxic relationships find the strength they need to get their sanity back.
And then some, right?
And
That's
then
what
some.
you said to me before.
Yes, yes. And so we have taken a break from going online in a while for a variety of reasons, and we're finally back. And our mailbox has been overflowing with questions that we've been getting in the past however long since we last did this. So today's going to be a Q&A, and we're going to start with the questions that we already got. Right, Chris?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
and send us more questions. Go to our website, beentheregotout.com.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of ways to contact us. Let us know what you're wondering about. If you're, in a toxic relationship, we certainly hope, that you are doing okay and that you protect yourself and then you can find what Lisa and I have found together. So
yeah. Okay, you ready?
I am.
First question?
What's the first question?
Okay, how can you make a narcissist stop gaslighting you?
Gaslighting, we should probably talk about what gaslighting is real briefly, right?
Go ahead.
So it's, maybe painting a different version of reality, right?
Yes.
Saying something as if it's real and inside yourself that it's just completely not. But it
or that things happen that never happened.
Exactly.
Or that things didn't happen that did happen.
And it, but they're so strong and convincing that you start to doubt yourself and question yourself, and it's dangerous.
Right.
It's like being in a cult. But anyway.
Yeah.
So how do you make them stop? Well, so the ideal way to make them stop and to stop doing, most of the things that toxic people do in relationships is just to completely cut off contact, right? And never look back. And it takes a lot of very diligent work on your part to make sure that the narcissist gets so completely bored, because that's what happens. They get bored. Mm-hmm. It's I always think of, I don't know if it's true or not that if you play dead by a bear, that the bear will leave you alone, but that's what everybody said when we were kids.
Yeah, I don't
right?
know. I don't really want to know.
I
want to find out.
But if they get bored enough, they'll move on to find new supply, find somebody else to get that energy from.
Yeah, they need an audience.
Now, they might continue, even if you've cut off all contact, there are still things they might do. They might stalk you, maybe even today with social media and things like that. They might conduct a smear campaign, which is spreading all kinds of rumors about you around, in your community, whatever. Or they might enlist others to kind of get at you, and there's a term for that. It comes from the Wizard of Oz, right? Called flying monkeys.
Yeah.
So there's just because you've cut them off and stopped the direct gaslighting, they still might do things to get at you. So this also could apply to someone who can't leave the relationship, right? Because I started off by saying the best thing you can do is just get out and cut off all contact. But it's trickier if you're, for whatever reason you can't leave, at least not yet, because it's like a never-ending game with them. And they thrive on it. They thrive on watching you twist with the gaslighting and but I know this isn't right. They love that. And so you have a specific example though, right? Like we were talking about this question before, something from your relationship.
Yeah, my past relationship. The narcissist I was once married to.
Not this relationship.
No. But so years ago, everything kind of blew up literally in our kitchen, and that's what it took to finally get a couple of repairs, and we had to redo a number of things. And one of the things that had to be taken care of was we needed different cabinets on the wall because everything else fell apart, like I said. So we had this really amazing contractor who had a background in art, which I really like. So it was like this gorgeous, funky new kitchen. And I was ready to start putting everything back in its place. And my ex-husband said, well, we can't use the cabinets to put the dishes in because they won't be able to hold the weight and everything's going to break. And I was like, no, that the contractor put the cabinets in so we could use them. And he was like, no. See, you don't understand. And the contractor doesn't understand but I understand that, you know, it's going to be too heavy. And I was just like, that's crazy. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But he was insistent, you know, and in the dynamic of our relationship, he was the older one. He was the wiser one. When it came to things like that, like structure and math, like he knew better. Also, this contractor was a woman. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it was like, you silly people, you just don't get it. And so what I did was, like, I knew he was wrong, but I could not convince him to let me put the dishes in the cabinet. He wanted us to put him in the drawer somewhere with the silverware, whatever. So I went to the contractor with him standing there, and I said, my husband believes that there's a problem with the cabinets and that we cannot use them to put the dishes back in. And she clearly expressed that he was wrong and explained why, and that ended it. But it was really something to have to go to a third person to correct something that was just outrageous in the first place.
Yeah.
Which goes back to what you need to do.
And I mean, we don't want to spend like an hour and a half on this Facebook Live, but I've got stuff too. And it just, yeah. So, I mean, I guess like our best advice would be, if you're, do you say gaslighted or gaslit? If you're being gaslit by someone, you know, don't react emotionally, no matter how ridiculous the gaslighting gets. Like, these were kitchen cabinets. They were designed for that purpose. Right. So it's ridiculous, but, you know, you can't react with emotion. They thrive on that.
Right.
So when you respond like rationally, factually, and as briefly as possible, just facts that support your view of reality. And obviously it's highly dependent on...
It doesn't always work as you...
Oh, yeah. It's not going to...
You can try. This is step one.
Right.
Try.
But definitely, you know, as Lisa did in that example, involve other people, right? And this helps you ground yourself too, because when somebody else confirms, you know, you're not the crazy one, you know, not that they're going to call your partner crazy, but, you know, that you're not crazy for your view of the situation, it kind of helps you say, okay, good, I'm good. Because the effect of gaslighting can be that you start to like lose yourself.
That's the intended.
Question yourself.
Yeah, that's the intended effect.
And just explain like calmly and reasonably your view. When, again, this is like Lisa did in front of this other person in the third party, what your view is. Let the narcissist, either you explain their view or let them explain their view. And the idea is to call them out, but not in a way that's emotional or embarrassing. You don't want to cause them to like melt down. You're not looking for a victory. You're not looking to hurt them. You're just sending the message, you're not going to let this gaslighting go on, you know, behind closed doors. You know, you're going to out them.
Well, you're looking for reality. So, yeah. All right. Next question.
If they're all this long, we are going to be here for an hour and a half.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is, for those of you who suffered PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, after living with someone who had NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, how long did it take before you got any better?
Yeah. So in my case, I was in an abusive relationship for 14 years, and I absolutely suffered from PTSD. And what the term is complex PTSD. Mm-hmm. The difference being PTSD is when there's like one traumatic event, there's, you know, an explosion or something like that. There's one thing. Complex is kind of analogous to death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a lot of continual, not to minimize the abuse, but it's not, you know, one hugely
happens
traumatic.
Again and again
it's
and
just
again.
And again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And we both experienced that.
Yeah. So, you know, like a lot of people, you know, I didn't even know what was going on until I was out of the relationship for a couple of years. And I couldn't go fully no contact. I'm very low contact, but we share custody of 2 kids. So for like 3 or 4 years after our separation, I get a knot in my stomach. Like anytime I saw I had a message from her, whether it, you know, this messaging app that we use that documents everything, it makes a noise when I've got a message, and you've been with me a lot. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, she probably tries to send when we're together to disrupt things. But, you know, I go, you know.
Yeah.
And I know you know what that feels like, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because so even though we have joint legal custody, my ex has been out of my kids' lives since the separation, since before the divorce. So it's been several years. So the only contact we have is through court. So my situation is actually, and I just found the name for it, it's called litigation abuse. So I'm going into my 7th year of dealing with this person in court. So because I don't really hear from him otherwise, like maybe once or twice a year, I only get things through attorneys and through court scheduled dates. My CPTSD has been transferred to the legal arena. So when I see an email from court or his attorney, I get like, oh my God, it's, here we go again.
And you still do?
Oh, I still do. Yeah. I still do, years and years. But I have to say that even though, I still have it, just having gone through this so many dozens and dozens of times in the past 3 years in particular, it used to be every Friday night, actually, and affect me with insomnia and a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety in my stomach. I found that as time has passed, because I'm getting so experienced with this situation, that my responses are less intense and it takes less time for me to recover from them because I'm less freaked out. But really the best thing that's helped me get through the PTSD and CPTSD is having someone to talk to, like Chris or my father or other people in our community who know my story well, friends with experience in this area, that they are able to help me talk myself down.
Yeah.
So it really helps. It's everything. Everything helps when you have people who understand you and understand the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And as I learned more about narcissistic abuse, I went to someone who's a specialist at domestic violence center in a treatment called EMDR, and I don't even know what it stands for, to be honest. But
it doesn't matter.
It's designed specifically to help people with PTSD, and this happened right at the beginning of COVID. Mm-hmm. So I went through like one cycle of dealing with one issue that, she just asked me to think of the most traumatic memory I had. Mm-hmm. And we dug back through it. And it was amazing. I did like 3 or 4 sessions with her, and it really helped.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why. I don't understand why it works, but it worked really well. And, I'm basically, COVID hit and I had to stop. But I was thinking, if I recall, at the time I was thinking about stopping anyway. It was kind of just like, okay, I get it. This is
well, you're getting better.
I was exactly
like immediately.
Yeah.
And profoundly.
Yeah. But so I'm 7 years out now of the relationship, and my CPTSD is basically gone. I don't know what would happen if I got the cop showed up in my door because of some nonsense she made up. But I don't get that knot anymore when I hear that I've got a message. It was a long road to get here. It's 7 years, right? But I want to go back to the original question, because the question was, how long does it take to get any better? Right? And I think, for me, it started to get better as I reduced contact with my ex. And, I learned about NPD. There's something called, there's no contact, and something called the Gray Rock method, which we did a whole workshop on.
Yes, we did.
And that's on learning, the shameless plug, right? That's on learning.beenthere.gotout.com. And the workshop's called No Contact and the Gray Rock Method. And that was maybe a year out of the relationship, so that's when I started to feel better. But it absolutely could have been faster for me.
Yeah.
Right? I'm talking about, I was getting treated for PTSD, less than a year ago. And so I was almost 6 years out of the relationship at that time. So it was still an issue for a long time. And I think if I had learned faster, if I had known what was going on faster, it would have been the whole process from when I'd start to feel better, make any progress to, getting through it would have been faster.
I know. Chris hates when I say it, but I always say it. Awareness is everything.
It is true. I'm not saying it's not true.
I know, but I love to say it. But it is. It's like, and when you have a name to put to something, it's like there's this, at least for me, it's like there's an epiphany. Like just a couple months ago, I learned what the term abusive litigation is, or litigation abuse, and I was like, oh, that's it. Like that's what I've been going through. And once you have a name, you can start learning about it, and you start realizing this happens to so many people, and you can start learning how to deal with it. So it's really, really helpful.
Right.
Okay, next question.
So, next question. What happens when you ignore a narcissist? Which is a great idea, by the way.
Yes. Okay, so say you start going no contact or gray rocking. In my experience, they get really, really mad, and this mask they've had up drops very quickly. So the narcissist that I was once married to liked to portray himself as having this really calm demeanor, like really reasonable, and nothing fazed him. And as soon as I stopped giving in and stopped going along with what he wanted, which was such a huge part of our relationship, which I didn't really think about, until I had some distance from it, he completely changed. It was like the evil monster inside showed its face, and it just stayed like that. And it was like, wow, that was beneath all of that the whole entire time. So, whatever I wasn't blamed for before, now everything is my fault.
Global warming.
Right. Like everything terrible in his life is my fault. He is very bitter and angry. You can see it on his face and his body language. And really, the ignoring him, and like I said earlier, his being completely out of my kids' lives, who are certainly old enough to know better at this point with all these years now. The only contact the only thing he can really do is through these emails, which he'll send usually around when there's some big court thing that's supposed to happen. He'll send a flurry of emails to my kids, but he's not even able to do that anymore. So for us, the only contact that we have is in court. So that's it. The only way that he gets attention, that he's not completely ignored, is what I keep referring to is this litigation abuse, where he stalks me through the courts. And we actually also did a whole workshop on that.
Shameless plug number 2. I think this is the last one, though.
We've been busy, so we haven't been online. I mean, we haven't been on Facebook Live because we've been doing all these workshops. Yeah, but the litigation abuse is pretty interesting. And that's, for so many of these people, when you ignore them and you cut them out of your life completely, that is the one avenue they still have to get at you.
Right. Exactly.
So, and we're also going to be another little plug for something coming up.
I said that was the last one.
It's
never over.
Yeah. So, because I keep bringing up litigation abuse, we're going to be starting a support group for victims of litigation abuse. So
yeah, and I think we're going to be doing that through Facebook also.
Yes, probably.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So that's a technology thing. So
right, but back to our thing. What happens when you ignore?
So
narcissists?
I mean, you mentioned that first reaction being anger is so true, and if you react, I mean, certainly in my case, I don't want to tell another story, but it's similar. The mask comes right off. Yeah. And you see like, oh my God, there's a monster under there.
Yeah, it's really something.
Yeah. So, but the key thing is, if you react to the anger, and especially with emotion, then you're right back where you started. You ignored them, which was a great first step, but then you've given them exactly what they're looking for.
Right.
And your attempt to ignore them, it's shot. Like you're back, back to the beginning. But if you're able to stay disciplined, and it's hard, and continue to ignore them, they eventually get bored. I was talking before about pretending you're dead for a bear. They move on to a more interesting target, right? Because they thrive on getting reactions from people. And really that's how you win, right? There's no winning in a relationship with a narcissist. The winning is in getting out, because they're expert manipulators. They're not going to make it easy on you.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So, next one. What common mistakes, Lisa's already laughing. What common mistakes do narcissists make?
Okay, so I recently posted this question on our Instagram feed, and I always love the responses from our community. It's like I had my response ready, and I thought, no, theirs are even better. So My favorite one was the mistake that this person's ex made was sharing their library full of books on emotional abuse. You know,
Like how-to guides, like how to manipulate your partner.
yeah, you know, and it's so funny because we know a lot about projection where they put their own traits onto you. A lot of times they'll call you the narcissist, so they'll have a whole bunch of stuff like, see, I can deal with you, and you're like, actually, it's going to help me deal with you.
Exactly.
So another person said that they don't imagine that one day will work out who and what they are. Like we just both said, when the mask comes off, they never think that you're going to actually find out, and it's really something when you do, because it changes everything.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. Another person said their lies will contradict if you pay attention. So true. And then another person said when lawyers get involved, they are called out. Now, in my experience, when the lawyer's dealing with the narcissist I was once married to, when they got involved, they actually perpetuated the lies and continued them. And you have to understand that this is something that's very common in a court setting, and it can be very confusing to judges who don't know who's telling the truth. So I found that the way to deal with this is to carefully document everything and to have patience, so that you can slowly catch people up with the facts.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd add that they get, we talked about getting caught in lies, right? They get sloppy with their lies.
They're sloppy anyway.
Yeah, and it really is, it comes from, I think, a lifetime of lying with little or no consequences.
Yes.
Right? They were trained that they could do this. They make them, and this makes them believe they're never going to get called out. Mm-hmm. And then I'd also add, well, I don't know if I call this really a mistake they make, but their behavior, once you understand, like really understand NPD, their behavior becomes predictable.
Oh, absolutely.
Totally predictable.
They say it's one of the most predictable types of behaviors.
Yeah. And you can, once you develop the skill set, I want to be really careful with this one, right? But once you develop the skill set, you can manipulate them rather than the other way around. And, when I say I want to be careful with it, it's not healthy.
No.
To play games with. The best thing to do is if you cut them out.
No, I'm thinking like in a court setting, there's certain strategies that you
Right.
can use, but you don't want to. We're not talking about getting revenge or toying with them, because
that stuff is poisonous. Stay away.
Yeah.
If you're in circumstances where it would be beneficial, like if you're like Lisa said, in court. You can use their weaknesses against them to protect yourself and your kids. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
So
the next one, what might cause a narcissist to admit that they lied?
Not irrefutable evidence, not screenshots. In my experience, honestly, it was repeating myself 12 times in a row saying, I know you're lying. I know you're lying. Can you please tell me exactly what happened? And I think that broken record technique, in my experience, kind of wore him down. So he never actually admitted, okay, I lied. But what he did was he'd say, well, here's some more information. Like, here's my version of it. And then sometimes some truth would be mixed in. But one thing that was very interesting was, especially at the tail end of our marriage, when it was obvious that he was lying about so many things and I had caught him and he knew he couldn't keep getting away with the lying, is I said, I don't understand, like, why do you keep lying? Like, why do you do this? You know you're going to get caught. And he said something true. He said, I lie because it's easier than telling the truth. So that was pretty interesting.
That's like a rare,
little glimpse.
Exactly the word that I was thinking of.
Yeah.
So from my experience, nothing, nothing will get them to admit it. But the bigger question to me is, I always try to read when people ask questions. I would try to understand like where they're coming from, And like, if this person is trying to like get some kind of closure or something, right, by getting an answer, like if they just admit it, I can move on.
Oh.
They're not going to give you that, right?
No.
So my question is like, why bother? Right? Why bother trying to get them to admit they lied? The relationship, if their if their narcissistic traits are strong, it's probably better to be out of the relationship. Right.
I wasted way too much time doing that, trying to get them to acknowledge what they were doing.
Right, closure. Right, you're looking for closure. You're looking for some resolution. You're looking to
reality.
Yeah, you're looking for to ground yourself, reground yourself. But what you can do, and we mentioned this earlier, is get them to think twice about lying in the future by calling them out. Right, unemotionally, like we said earlier, ideally in front of others, like we said earlier, and if they know they're going to pay a price in terms of damage to their self-esteem, which is everything to them, right? They might shy away from paying that price. It might make them maybe,
but they'll probably stumble a few times.
Yeah. So that's it.
Yeah.
That's it for the questions, the mailbags, right? The mailbag for this week.
Right. And if you have any questions that we didn't answer, put them in the chat box, get in touch with us through our website or Instagram or Facebook, however, and we'll try and answer them next week because we want to keep going with this as a series.
Right. So we've moved from, we were doing these on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time here in the New York City area, but now we're going to do them on Thursday at noon.
Yes.
And we're going to try and do them pretty much every week.
We'll try.
And hope you can join us.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Let's go have lunch.